The Chiefs went and earned their right to have a rest. What does that look like, and what's the best way forward as they get ready for the Broncos and beyond today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make another Locked On show your next listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you like, sub, hit the bell, do all the things, because we're always here for you, including our locos, every single day here on Locked On Chiefs. You can get that at 816-357-8781 and get subscribed over there. We have a lot to go over, as we have a lot of question marks at this point. We are going to cover what are the details, what are the little things that we have to keep in mind as we get ready for the Chiefs to play the Broncos, and what is a pivotal game for them, not so much for the Chiefs. Then, before that, we'll get to the best case scenario. If everything went perfectly, how would it go? What would it look like? And we will start with, what are the scenarios? Who should play? Who shouldn't play? What does history tell us a little bit? You can get all this and more over at KC Chiefs Corner for Chris, where you can get subscribed to his Substack. And on my sites, NFL33.com and RGRfootball.com. That's the YouTube channel you can get over there as well. I'm excited about the scenarios because if we go back and we look through history, when they've had this opportunity before, they generally do rest their stars and a few other players. Now, there's no reason to see Chris Jones. There's no reason to even expect him to be dressed. Perfectly fine. Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes should not play. Have to protect them because we know what a grind that it's been. After that, it gets a little bit interesting. And I think question number one for me is, in years past, they rested Rashee Rice, didn't even activate him. They rested MVS for a game as well. I think it's just a little bit different because Hollywood's barely been back. I don't know if they're going to rest him, but I certainly would. I would take no chances at diminishing weapons for the playoff run on a meaningless football game in Week 18.
Don't disagree with you at all. It's going to be very curious to me to see who they sit and who they don't. The biggest problem right now is it's going to be basically almost a 3-week layoff. I mean, it's not full 3 weeks, but it's basically 3 weeks at this point. And that's going to be the big question is, what do you want to do? Because the reality is whoever you're going to play has to practice. And the guys that aren't going to play need to take a back seat. And that's fine, especially since you're going to have a bye week. So you have an extra week to prepare. All the starters can get time the next week. That's all going to be fine. But the question really is do you want to use guys that maybe you're still coming back from injury and trying to get back into football shape and trying to get ready for the playoffs, i.e. a guy like Charles Omenihu, i.e. a guy like Hollywood Brown? Do you want to have those guys out there? Do you want to risk anything? I will say this. It's really tough for me because everything I've seen from Hollywood Brown makes me think that this offense is at a whole new level with him. And that makes me want to think, okay, maybe he is somebody that needs to sit, because if you sit him, he can be healthy and ready to go for the playoffs more than likely. If he plays, there's a risk of injury, and then the offense goes back to what it has been, which isn't great.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, right? For all these scenarios and everything we're going to talk about today, it's about a minor risk, but there's always a risk. It is never zero that you can play a ball game and not get hurt. And I completely agree with you. I think it's changed so much. And here's the other thing. We know Patrick's not going to play. The reason you would play Hollywood Brown is to continue to build the chemistry with Patrick. If Patrick's not playing, there's no reason at all, in my mind, for him to be out there. I would honestly probably not play X either, because everything that we've gone through, again, nothing matters if it's not with Mahomes. So I'd probably give them the day off. I'd like to see Tyquan Thornton get called up, to tell you the truth. Like, there are some options on this roster, including Nico Romeo, that you might want to get a look at, even if it is with Carson, who those guys practice with more often than not. So it does, for me, feel like a wholesale replacement.
But is it going to be Carson? That's the thing. I don't know that it's going to be Carson Wentz. Well, and I could argue the other. That's true, but I could also argue in this case, maybe you don't go that direction, because Carson Wentz is somebody that's got a ton of playing time in the NFL, and you're in a situation where if he goes down and something happens to Mahomes, you're left with a Lodicun or a Lodica, and I don't think you want that. So I could see it both ways. And you're putting him out there with a backup offensive line, more than likely. I can't imagine most of the offensive linemen are going to play. especially the guys that have been dinged up and on the injury report. It's possible that they're going to have, Creed Humphrey play. It's possible they're going to have Trey Smith play just because that's kind of the way these guys are. Same with Joe Thuney. But I can't imagine DJ Humphries is playing. I don't know that Jawan Taylor will play. So do you want a backup quarterback like Wentz, who you think could actually step in and maybe win you a playoff game, out there with backup offensive tackles?
I think you have to, because he's got no reps. He's rusty.
That's true.
So as far as I'm concerned, when I look at what they've done in the past, Luke Cohn did dress, but didn't play last time. It was the backup player. And so I think more than likely Andy sticks with Andy and just does what he's used to. He wants to see Carson. He likes Carson. He tried for multiple years to get Carson here. So I do think he wants to see him in his offense a little bit, under fire against an actual enemy defense. So I have a tendency to think you go with Wentz and you put him out there. It's interesting you bring up Creed, though, because if there's one starting offensive lineman that I would want to play with Carson Wentz, it's Creed, to get the snaps down, to do everything that could become mechanically difficult later if Carson Wentz had to take snaps.
See, that's an interesting point, because I would also argue that I don't know that Creed would actually play center, because go back and look at what they did the last time. Yeah. Creed played guard. And I'm not saying that they would do that again this time. I completely understand what you're saying, but maybe they would bring in and put their guy, maybe it's CJ Hansen that they'd have in there, or maybe there'd be somebody else that they'd have in there as their center, and Creed would play guard just to try to get him reps at another position. I don't know what they're going to do at offensive line, because it makes a lot of sense that those guys are going to go out there and play, because generally speaking, that's what they do. They're built for that. They want to do that, and they want to start. That is something that they take pride in. Even if it's not at the same position, they want to be playing on Sunday. And the reality is, like I've said, the Chiefs don't have enough people to be able to replace everybody that they want to replace. So especially when you start talking about a position that takes 5 at offensive line, it makes a lot more sense to let some of those guys play if that's what they want to do, because the chances are, yes, there's a bigger chance of injury, obviously, if they play, but generally speaking, they've been playing through stuff all year long. So we're in a situation where I think it makes sense to let offensive linemen play, and unless they get rolled up on, which is definitely a distinct possibility, they're generally going to be okay. It's not the same as a wide receiver that goes out there and gets drilled by somebody coming across the middle trying to take him out and knock the ball out.
That's true. I think clearly the tackles need to be backups. The interior 3 gets questionable. I personally want to see Norzad on the field. I want to see Hansen on the field. I want to see Kingsley, and I think we have to see either is Ethan. We know what Wanya is, so I'd like to see that myself.
He needs to sit, personally.
Who does?
I think Morris needs to sit. I think Morris needs to try to get as healthy as much as possible, because to me, he is their swing guy right now.
Yep, exactly. And so that does kind of shadow what they can do with the position that requires 5 people. But it's not the only one. So if it all works out best, what does it look like this week against the Broncos? That's coming up next. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? They definitely happened to me, and they helped a lot. There's a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for. Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant on your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel the unwanted subscriptions, monitoring your spending, and helps you lower your bills and everything that you're spending to grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, helps you, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or your goals that you want for this year. Rocket Money has 5 million users, and they've saved over 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they're using the app's premium services. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions right now and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Now make sure you check out KC Chiefs Corner, RGR Football, and NFL 33. We've got other content there that you guys might read in a different form. And make sure that you like, sub, and hit the bell here on this channel, because this is where we start every day and then get to the audio platforms. I'm excited because I think this is an opportunity for us to see some players that we haven't seen a whole lot of. Now, on the defensive side, not to leave them out, we know Chris Jones isn't going to play. Trent McDuffie isn't going to play. In the past, both L'Jarius Sneed, he didn't play the last time. So we can't expect that. So you get to see, but a little bit different this year. the defensive depth has been pushed a little bit farther than the offensive depth outside of wide receiver, in my opinion. So we've seen Chris Rowland Wallace already. Keith Taylor's been on the field already. Obviously, Hicks is playing a lot. The only thing that I think is really questionable right now is the linebacker level, and I do think Cam Jones will play and probably give Nick Bolton the day off. And I'd actually like to see someone else get pulled up. There was just an acquisition at the linebacker spot so that maybe Drew Tranquill can get an extra week off. Now, Drew, I think, is not in a position that has to have it, but overall, the defense is running a little bit thinner than normal. So it may not even look that different on that side.
You know, it's interesting. I wanted to check on something because before we started, I remembered that there is word out there that Jalen Watson is out there running. He posted something on his Instagram. He's out there running. Andy Reid just said in his press conference, as we're recording this, that there's a possibility that McCole Hardman and Jalen Watson return for the playoffs. Lesser so Jalen Watson. And I know we're talking about the Denver game, but that's something to take into account as to how all of this is going to play out for the Chiefs. And something else just to throw out there, because it is newsworthy. If Jalen Watson comes back, that really changes things on the defensive side of the ball. For me, it does. The way he was playing.
But he's going to be rusty as all get out.
That's
the problem. So I completely agree with you. Basically, the only two people in Kansas City that thought Jalen had a chance to return this season was me and Jalen. So I'm glad to see that he's gotten to that point. Getting cleared is a whole different thing.
That's true.
But he's got 3 weeks additional time, right? So maybe that helps him. And then maybe he can practice. If he can get onto the practice field, I think you're right. He could help in the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, I was going to say
the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, it may not be the divisional game, but it could be further down the line. And that's all that really matters. I mean, you know, Kansas City, yes, they have to play the divisional game. They have to get to the AFC Championship. They have to get to the Super Bowl. I understand all that. But getting these guys where they need to go and getting him practicing and getting him back, you know, starting to get on the field is important. You know, you look at the defensive side of the ball, corner has been something that's been very rough this season for Kansas City. It's just injuries and guys that have not gotten a ton of playing time in Najee Johnson. Chris Wallace has been somebody that I think has stepped up and really looked good. So I do like what I've seen there. He could have a big game against Denver. And I'm not saying big as in like he's going to take over. I think it's just big as in he's going to get a ton of snaps and he may look rough, but that doesn't really matter. That's not what you're trying to get. You're trying to get him snaps. You're trying to get him ready for the playoffs in case he has to step in. That's what all of this needs to be looked at in the lens of, is not how they look against Denver, who has to win this game with their starters, versus the guys that are backups for Kansas City, just trying to get them ready as much as possible in case they do need to play.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And getting Jalen back is a best case scenario.
Yep.
Getting McCole back is a nice bonus. If everything else goes to plan, DJ Humphries is 100% as well. That would be best case. Obviously, nobody plays a ball game will lose. But this is a game the Broncos have to get in, or to stay in, I guess, technically. And it's a game you don't have to have. So it does take a little bit of a different shine. I want to see Steven Nelson out there. He's on the practice squad sitting. He's had a couple of weeks to acclimate. Again, if Jalen can't get back, he's somebody that you might have to call up through the rigors of January football, right?
So I don't have a problem with that. My only issue is that you're in a situation where you're already going to have to use a call up for the third QB in Olodokun. So is Steven Nelson the only other guy you're going to call up from the practice squad for this game?
I want to see Thornton, and Hendershot's out there. I don't know what his specific status is. Did he go back onto the 53? I don't think so. I do want to see him out there as well. He did go back onto the 53, as I understand, looking at it right now. So I think you want to get more of a look at that. Tyquan Thornton's obviously been practicing for quite a bit, been practicing with Carson Wentz. They just released Montrell Washington this morning. So I do think that it's a narrowing of what the wide receiver group is, but I think Thornton might be in a position to get ready to make a debut and see what he can bring to the offense.
Yeah, and it's my only point is it's going to be very curious to see what they do and who they bring up, because I think you have to bring up Olodokun, and you're going to have – that means you have one other player that you can bring up. If it's Steven Nelson, I get it, because that basically gets you to a point where you feel like he could maybe step in and maybe help in the playoffs. If it's not Steven Nelson, maybe it is another wide receiver to see what you have in them. It could be a linebacker. There's lots of different scenarios and things that they could be looking at as to who they're going to bring up for that last spot. So I'll be really curious to see what they do. You know, the other news that Andy Reid just said, and just to throw this out there, is there is no chance that Sky Moore or Rashee Rice will be back for the playoffs. So just want to throw that out there. Not that anybody should really expected either of those guys back, but it's been stated Rice won't be back, which doesn't surprise me. It was a 6-month recovery period.
Yeah, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
I think Jalen, let's cross our fingers. But there are other things that can help this team. There's plenty of other concepts. If everything looks good, what are the details? What do we want to get out of this last game against the Broncos? Coming up next. Now, always fun to theorize, right? And we can probably take our time with this one, folks. If you have theories, go ahead and put them in the comments here on YouTube and make sure that you like and sub. I have a couple of crazy things that I'd like to see happen. I'm not going to pay attention to the call-up rules and that kind of stuff, but I do want to see some flipping. If you are going to play safeties, for one thing that I would like to see if Najee Johnson can actually step back into space and take on some of that third safety role to maybe get him a little bit more comfortable. He's been up and down all season long, and he has put in some good snaps. I think his run support's been excellent, especially for a guy his size. But we have to go back to the fact that I don't know that he's a nickel, much like Chamari Connor. They both play in space. I don't know that you need to rush Chamari, so maybe you get some looks at Najee as a safety.
That's interesting, and it's funny because the Chiefs roster has always listed him as a safety, yet they play him at corner. So, and I know that that's not it is what it is on the roster on their website, and whatever. I'm really going to be curious to see how they play that out, because obviously Keith Taylor can play. Obviously Joshua Williams is probably going to get more time, because I'm sure that they want to keep him getting more reps and trying to get better there. And CRW is going to play. So that could make sense. Having Najee Johnson go back to safety, it also gives you a chance to take more reps off of a guy like Justin Reed and Brian Cook, who probably don't need the playing time near as much. Chamari Connor is going to be interesting. Is he back from the concussion? We don't know yet. We won't know until later, until they practice, and we probably won't know until maybe our Wednesday show when Matt Derrick is on, because I haven't seen anything that he's been cleared. So that's a big question mark. But they definitely need to get Jaden Hicks more snaps in this game. And I'm guessing he's going to be the starter. And I know that this isn't as big of a deal, but I would literally put Harrison Butker on the bench and say, okay, you're not playing this game. We're going to give all the kicking duties to Justin Reed and just have Justin kick. There's no reason Reed needs to be on the field as a safety. He can be the kickoff guy. He can be the points after guy. He can be a field goal guy. Give him the experience for that, and give Butker the game off, because try to get that knee as healthy as it can be for the playoffs. And like you said earlier, and we've already talked about, this game isn't necessary for Kansas City. There's no reason to put him in a situation where he doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I agree. Upon looking a little bit deeper at some snaps, it was not obviously the greatest start for Marlon Tui Polotu, but I want to see a lot more of him. I would like to see him be out front and center, trying to take on that nose tackle spot and give Derek Nottie some rest. Derek Nottie has been playing injured all season long, and he's just grinding through it because he's dedicated and because he wants that ring. But give him a chance to actually heal up a little bit. 3 weeks off for him might be more beneficial than anybody else on this roster, to tell you the truth.
Well, and Marlon needs some time to play. I wouldn't care if he went out there and he got 75% of the snaps. He's not. That's not generally what you're going to do with a nose tackle. But the reality, but the reality is that you want to keep as many of your normal starters and guys that aren't going to play off the field as much as you can. And if you give up a little bit of extra yardage, and maybe you give up a touchdown or two because you have a backup in there that's gassed, I'm okay with that. The reality is the guy has been on their roster all season and hasn't played until last week. So this is a situation where he should be getting a ton of snaps because of the fact that he is not going to be really a guy that's going to play into their defensive plans in the playoffs, because you have Chris Jones, you have Pennell, you have Warden, and you have Nottie. They're all ahead of him. Give him as much reps as you can. And honestly, the other guy that I'd like to see a ton of reps from, and maybe more even so in the interior, is Malik Herring. Give him some interior reps. Have him run as defensive tackle. I'm not saying it has to be every down, but he breaks down inside at times, Give him more of that in this game and eat up some of those defensive tackle reps. Give your other guys, like FAU and whoever you're going to play defensive end, those defensive end snaps. I'm sure Uche is going to play. Let him play the entire game.
That was the one for me. George Karlaftis rested last time. I think they should do that again. He and Chris and Charles perfectly rested come playoffs. So let Uche play a lot. We haven't seen enough out of him actually, and I thought he had some good bull rushes in there when he was active. Obviously, didn't have a whole lot of production, but he has the ability. So why not let him in a situation here where that might be the difference? Bo Nix actually had some great plays yesterday. And I was a fan of Nix coming out. Tough to talk about him being a Bronco, but that's okay. He also had some huge mistakes. And there are opportunities there. And I'd like to see the younger guys, especially on the defensive side, have that chance to really attack a full-strength offense when they don't have the pressure on them that they might cost them a ball game.
Yeah. And, I mean, we're just in a situation where this game, like we've said multiple times, it doesn't matter for Kansas City. So go play your guys and go play. The other thing that we need to take with a grain of salt, and everybody needs to take with a grain of salt when they watch them against the Broncos, is I just about guarantee you this is going to be the most vanilla game ever. If you are upset because the Chiefs defense isn't doing anything or the Chiefs offense isn't doing anything, go look at the play calling, because I would just about guarantee that they're not going to be putting anything on tape because they have no reason to.
No. And it's not the primary executable that you want out there when you're trying to do something new.
Right.
I do think
but I'm even just talking about blitzes.
Yeah. It takes that. If Felix Anudike-Uzomah and Josh Uche have to lock it down and provide the outside pass rush, because you're not going to do replacement blitzes. At least you shouldn't. I don't think that Spags needs to reinforce that down, because he's already into the second and third tier players on the secondary that he usually will do those with. So I don't think there's a learning opportunity there in particular. Just let your pass rushers rest. Mike Dan is another guy who didn't play the last time. It was active but didn't play. I think that's a significant thing too as well, especially how well Mike stepped up when Chris had to be out. So again, like, you keep that in reserve a little bit is what I would suggest.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, my main point is just realize that going into this game, regardless of who's playing, they're not going to put stuff out there that people already haven't seen. I mean, they're just Steve Spagnuolo, and honestly, they're not even going to put stuff out there that people have seen. They're not going to run some of the plays that you would normally see from them because of who they're going to go against. I mean, the other thing we haven't really talked about is who's going to be the running back. Like, I get the thought process at wide receiver. I get you're probably not going to get a ton of playing time, or maybe Hollywood doesn't even play. I would imagine D-Hop doesn't play. Maybe they're dressed, but I don't think they play. I don't know if Worthy's going to play. I think that there's a little bit of value in getting him a few snaps, but I kind of understand both sides of it. But then you look at the running back situation, and you're already 3 deep at running back. Are you going to sit there and have Carson Steele go out there for every single snap? I would imagine P. Ryan has to be a guy that's going to get in at times, because you're not going to give Pacheco or Hunt, I don't think, any carries in this game. Not anything significant anyway.
Agreed. This is the Carson Steele game as far as I'm concerned. So let him run. You remember when Patrick started his first game? It was against Denver in the last game of the season, and it was Sherm that got the bulk of the carries. I would like to see a very similar game plan. So let's do it. When you take a look real quick yeah, absolutely. Let's use it.
Same number.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole different concept, but that's all right. When we take a look at the standings, Denver does have something to play for. If the Chiefs should lose to them, it will solidify themselves into the playoffs. Cincinnati, with that loss, is right on the doorstep here, and so you got to guard against that. The AFC South winner is determined. It will be the Houston Texans. So they are the 4 seed no matter what. The Baltimore Ravens cannot catch the Buffalo Bills. So unless, and I'm looking at the standings here, Pittsburgh, Baltimore could come out a little bit interesting, but as long as the Ravens hold out, it will be the Chiefs against the lowest seed remaining, which is most likely to be the Houston Texans when you look at these playoff teams. But all these teams have stuff to play for. So it will be a hard-fought battle against the Broncos.
Yeah, it's going to be. And I'm curious, are the Broncos going to know before the game starts?
It's a good question. Yeah. I am not sure the schedule.
Yeah. So I believe based on the way the playoffs are set up, that the the Broncos will know what they have to do, because I think the only team that can take the playoff spot from them is the Bengals, and the Bengals play the Steelers on Saturday.
On early. Yep.
So if that's the case, then it's possible that both Denver and Kansas City will have nothing to play for.
It could, absolutely. Now, if the Ravens were to lose to the Browns, of all things, and the Steelers were to win, that would create a different scenario. We'll have to keep an eye on that. I can't see it happening. So it should be pretty chalk as far as it looks right now. But for the Chiefs, it's just
that
about.
could throw a huge wrench in how everything goes in this game.
It could. Just won't change anything for Kansas City.
Nope.
It'll just be who that lowest seed is and where they go. We'd like to know what you think. Leave us your thoughts and comments down below on the YouTube channel. Who stands out to you? Who needs the rest? And who do you want to see? I'm really interested to see what Chiefs Kingdom thinks they want to get a look at right now in a one-game tryout, stand-up, whatever you want to call it. There is plenty to look at here. We are going to be back with you all week like we always are, so don't worry about that. Matt Derrick will join us midweek. We'll be back with more, and we will preview this interesting yet maybe not impactful game, especially when we know more and the Chiefs are back at practice. Thanks for joining us today. Like, sub, hit the bell. Check out another Locked On show for your next one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.